DevOps Dispatch presents Voices from the Industry. These are not paid ads.
All right, coming to you live from Chis Aniszczyk here at Austin, Texas, down south Austin, South Market.
South of the river.
I'm thinking back in San Francisco. No, yes, wrong place. So, CTO for the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. Yep. You've been helping us with some explanations around new concepts. We talked about WebAssembly. We talked about Cloud Native IDEs. We talked about SBOMs. And now, last but not least, wanted to hear about Backstage. That was on when you talked about your 10 predictions for this year. Backstage was one of them. What did you predict? What is it? Why do I
I mean, Backstage is part of like this category, a general category called IDPs, or like internal developer platforms, right? Basically what companies use to essentially centralize the development of their software, for developers. And what I mean here is like, yes, like most things have like lots of services power, a tool, right? So, for example, when I worked at, Twitter's powered by lots of different services. You have the direct message service, you have the timeline service, you have the whatever, off login service. You have different owners of those services. They all have different like service level agreements. They have like different documentation. Traditionally, those companies would have this stuff all over the place, like be like some wiki, it could be there, like whatever. Backstage and IDPs in general are all about centralizing kind of like a single pane of glass, for lack of a better terminology, of having all your services in one place, all the ownership, who owns it, all the data needed to like build a service. So like, hey, if you're a new developer, you want to build a new service, maybe we want to do, a translation service because our tool wants to translate stuff from one language to another. You would go basically scaffold, that using the tool. So Backstage, is an open source project that came out of Spotify originally. Twitter, we built our own service catalog. We called it Service, which was kind of our version of IDP. Spotify did the same thing, but they built it internally called Backstage, and eventually decided to open source and share it, with the world, because people were just sick of kind of building these things on your own. Most of the kind of let's call Bay Area web scale companies, they all have their version of, let's call it internal service, catalog or IDP. Solution. There was no good open source option out there until Backstage came along.
So this came out of Spotify. Is there something unique that Backstage does that was optimized for the business, the type of transactions that they're making? Was it pretty basic?
It was pretty basic. Yeah, they just needed like a developer portal. It is basically look at which like you start, like you need a service catalog, and with that service catalog you need ways to like build tools around that, right? And generally what that means is like you need to have a plugin system. So I have a service and maybe I have plugins to like generate docs. I have plugins to generate code. I have plugins to maybe deal with cost management for that particular service, or is my SLO satisfied? So it's like they built like the basic scaffolding of like what an internal developer platform looks like, and then a plugin system, and they have plugins for like almost everything. So if you go to backstage.io/plugins, you'll see like plugins for everything. And
this is for the open source project.
For the open source project, which Spotify contributed to CNCF, a little over like a year and a half ago. And you have this great like useful tool that Spotify uses internally because they have tons of microservices, lots of services, power things, different ownership, different teams. All the documentation for this stuff is all centralized, so you can actually go search docs consistently, in one place versus like jumping to GitHub or Confluence or Jira or whatever. Like this, it's all in one place and all indexed in one place. You also have a lot of developer insights there, like, hey, is this service like not maintained anymore? Like it just makes it super easy, and it has a lot of kind of like code generation and document generation tools part of it. And also, like I mentioned, the kind of plugin ecosystem. And one way to look at it, it's not the perfect analogy, but like if you remember Jenkins back in the day, Jenkins, very popular CI system. There were other open source options out there, but the thing Jenkins, Bamboo I think came from Atlassian. There was Concourse, maybe was one. There was something from the ThoughtWorks folks. I forgot the name of it, but there wasn't many out there. They were pretty bad. What Jenkins did uniquely was like have a ton of a plugin ecosystem. The amount of there's literally there's Jenkins plugins for everything, and that workflow of like making it easy to contribute plugins and having like for lack of a better word, like an index or marketplace where you kind of search for these things, like just made the project grow incredibly. Backstage, I think, is kind of having that like Jenkins moment in some ways, where it's like people are just contributing plugins. Like, hey, I did this. We needed this for the service, and it's just kind of growing.
And they tell two friends, and they tell two friends.
And so everyone needs a service catalog. Generally internally, as they kind of become cloud native, they need to catalog all their services, who owns them, who's responsible for them, tooling around to make it easier to start things. And so it's just kind of a nice system that kind of solves that particular problem. And honestly, I think Spotify is doing actually a good job of speaking about it. And what's interesting is like we're actually the adoption of Backstage is fascinating because I would say when Kubernetes started, it was mostly high scale, kind of web scale, high tech, Silicon Valley style companies. Backstage is a little bit weird. Like it came from Spotify, but it was adopted by like folks like American Airlines or like an insurance guy. Like I feel like companies that were not your traditional first mover high tech companies, bleeding tech. And I think my theory of why this is because the companies that didn't have a service catalog or whatever, they built their own. So they have this thing that Twitter has one, Facebook has one, Google, like everyone's kind of built their own things, and so they don't need one. Eventually they're going to be like, why the hell are we building this again? We should just go like
that's not the value add.
Yeah, and then the other kind of Backstage thing is there's actually a big commercial ecosystem now where for example VMware, I forgot the name of the thing. It's like Tanzu Service Catalog or Tanzu app, whatever. Tanzu something,
right.
VMware something. It's all based on Backstage now, and so they're productizing that. Red Hat also has a very similar thing where they were building a service catalog product. They're all pivoting that to be based on Backstage. So you're now having this like hey, anyone that offers like a Kubernetes full-blown solution or a cloud-native solution, generally you want a service catalog, part of that, just like you would want like an observability system like Prometheus. And so you have these vendors now packaging and supporting the project. So like Backstage is just jumping in, everywhere. It's one of our fastest growing projects in CNCF. It's top 5 in terms of like velocity. And like last year, it was hardly on the map. So it's just wild to see how fast it's grown.
So it sounds like from what you're saying, since these less bleeding tech companies are adopting it, the plugins are not just the sexy cutting edge ones. They're ones just to do regular work that you need.
Because indexing docs across different systems, basic developer insights, service catalog, which is like the primary case of like I just need to list all the services that make up something and like who owns it and like different kind of requirements, SLOs, like all docs associated with it, and then also scaffolding to help generate new things. So it's basically ways to standardize and professionalize your development practices inside a company, which is orthogonal to, let's call it like cloud native IDEs, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's how they do it.
IDEs are like how you develop the software. This would be something that you could potentially plug into that, where you could generate a new service. Say, using the Backstage, command line tool. Hey, I need to write a new service. It'll pop all the stuff that will appear in like a cloud native IDE or your local, VS Code. It's like you think of it more as like a scaffolding, system.
And the APIs are well documented, easy enough to use. Someone could take them, and then like one of these more normal companies could take them and then build things off of them.
Yep, I think that's and they just need a service catalog. Like, hey, we just need a modern service catalog, and we need to index. But I think the two most widely used plugins for Backstage, I think, are Tech Docs and Tech Insights. Tech Docs is a way to index all the documentation that you have. Because if you're a developer, usually
meat and potatoes.
Very big. Like it's like who would have known having something that could search documentation across all my different systems and make it easy, to find. Along with like who owns this thing. A lot of companies like they have all these things and like who actually owns that service? Is that person? Is she even here? Exactly. So like that basic need is met, and like I said, the plugin great ecosystem is just constantly kind of growing there, which I'm just impressed. It's I think if we give it another year, it'll probably be top 3 most active project in CNCF. I imagine it's going to be Kubernetes, OpenTelemetry, and Backstage will probably be the top 3 overall. But yeah, definitely it's ready to use today. The APIs are stable because people are writing plugins. I do think they're going to have to it's got so much growth and feedback now, they're probably going to have to do like a major version rev in the future and kind of maybe think about how to I think when they originally built it, they didn't really build it for like thousands of plugins, and so there'll be some evolution, but there's a lot of great people involved. Good time to kind of give feedback, but it is truly useful, today, and it is great to see organizations like VMware or Red Hat like building, products in this. And it's not even those. Like there's even smaller companies like I think Harness is another one, which is kind of the idea that they have like a
Harness.io.
I think Harness.io. I think they have like a service catalog type offering. They offer like different tools in the DevOps tool chain. So I think that's what you're going to see. People are just going to productionize this, offer it as a service, or offer as like an opinionated kind of version of this. So yeah, definitely check it out. And it's one of those rare technologies that you kind of see popping up in like an airline first versus like a some crazy Bay Area high tech Silicon Valley company. So it's been funny to watch. We don't have too many projects that work out that way in CNCF. CNCF tends to be all the bleeding edge folks.
Highfalutin, cool, but no utility.
Exactly. Bleeding edge experiment. I would say no utility. It's like innovation, bleeding edge experimentation to kind of build that utility.
Tip of the spear, whatever you want to say. So if I were someone who said, I want to get me some Backstage, how would I get into it? What would I?
Yeah, so there's my advice there. The Backstage.io is a great site. They have a lot of great videos, great tutorials. I would just start there, because if you never worked with a service catalog type system before, you just have to kind of learn what that means and how that works, and then eventually experiment with the CLI. Right now, it is not, it's an open source project, not the easiest thing always to kind of get started and install, but watch the videos first, get the concepts, and then go to the kind of installation page. There are companies out there that are offering like Backstage as a service, so if you don't want to like run it out, you can get like a cloud-based thing. If you go to backstage.io/community, they have a list of kind of companies out there. I think there's like Roadie, Frontside, other companies are offering kind of like a, as a service thing. And obviously, like I mentioned, both VMware and Red Hat are doing they have some product. I don't know what it's called. It's the OpenShift Service Catalog or Tanzu Service Catalog. You could look at those offerings too if that's kind of what your company does. But there's a lot of innovation happening out there.
That's cool. It could be like that could be Spotify's side hustle, just like AWS was the side hustle of Amazon. Then it becomes there could be a side project they support. And
it could be. They actually have Spotify does have a set of commercial plugins that they're trying to figure out how to sell or how to do. So like if you go to Spotify, if you just Google Spotify Backstage, you have kind of a website where you could go kind of subscribe to these things. So Spotify is trying to experiment, actually. Like,
Spotify web service.
There we go.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's cool to see them doing that. We'll see how the experiment plays out, but they've obviously built this amazing tool, and it's truly like Spotify already was fairly well known for solid engineering practices. They had this kind of notion of squads, and eventually they kind of just shared tools that they developed. So I think their engineering practices are viewed super highly, and like they weren't going to develop this on their own. Like they're in the business of selling music, some tunes. Right?
And I think that this goes back to the idea of easy is hard, right? When you're doing consumer products, whether it's a Netflix, which is also known for being great technology, or you're listening to music, if it doesn't run super smooth, consumers are going to say, I don't want to fiddle with this. So it has. And like I said, easy is hard, so there's got to be a lot of technology there to make it so smooth.
And it makes developers, standardized kind of developer workflow. So it's a great way to kind of, make sure developers are more efficient. If you could squeeze out 5, 10, 20% more efficiency to develop feature and direct value to your end users, great. You definitely you want.
And then there's Jevons paradox, as you mentioned. They don't get that 5% back when they have to spend that.
It's a whole other. Exactly. So. So for my advice, go to Backstage.io, check it out. They have great video, like the documentation for an open source project. High caliber.
Put your eyes to shame?
Yeah, a little bit. I was like, Spotify has good designers, good docs folks, so I think they did
it's all the consumer part,
Yeah, they have a taste of design versus like, here's just like a GitHub README, go wild. So definitely go check it out. And we also hosted the first Backstage Con last year, so I would go there and check out some of the videos.
Sweden? Where was
it? It was in North America last year, which was, I'm trying to go, like my mind is blanking, where the hell did we do the conference? Last year it was in LA. Oh my gosh,
Philadelphia.
It wasn't Philly. It's in Chicago this year. It's like where my brain is. We had too much. We had a call on KubeCon. We were planning, so my brain's a little bit fried.
So how big was it? How many folks?
It was a few hundred. So it was our largest co-located event at KubeCon last year, outside of Cloud Native Security Con, which was fully sold out. But we knew that one was bigger.
So this broke out separate, you're saying?
Cloud Native Security Con broke out separately. Backstage hasn't broken out separately, but at its growth rate, maybe we'll do that. But the talks were great there because you could kind of learn from like the American Air, like all these, I would say, traditional companies, and then also hear from folks like Red Hat and VMware that talked a little bit about like there's kind of story of like, oh, well, we were building our own service catalog thing, and then we kind of looked out there like, wait, there's an active community here. Why are we doing our own thing where we could just kind of go in?
We're going to build our own email system for our company. We're a startup, and we're going to work on that.
So I mean, kudos to those companies that have kind of decided to jump in and contribute and help, and they have maintainers, and they're supporting the project in a very healthy, healthy way. And I think that's probably part of the growth is this kind of support coming, from them. And both VMware, Tanzu, and Red Hat with OpenShift have very large, broad, huge deployments. Like, I saw in the news, whatever, like a week ago, OpenShift broke $1 billion in run rate, and I was like, holy crap,
that's a lot of money.
People, that's some people say Kubernetes is not, not everywhere. So people are definitely, they probably have bought OpenShift, it's worked out for them, and now they need like a service catalog offering, and so that's something that Red Hat will sell. Same thing with VMware and Tanzu. Like that's exactly what's kind of happening here. And some folks may not need that full thing, and they'll just use a Backstage cloud, Backstage as a service offering.
It's really, I mean, it's sort of the classic sort of unsexy is actually really can be very, very sexy because it offloads all the stuff that
it's super simple.
Differentiate you, and then the ecosystem gives it the real utility. Right? So
it's the plugin and ecosystem truly that is just phenomenal. The amount of plugins and stuff that are being written for Backstage is crazy. This is the reason why Jenkins will probably be here forever, because there's just a billion plugins out there that make it impossible to untangle and move out of there.
It's like that old chestnut Betamax versus VHS. Betamax, much better technology, but you can only do like this many movies when you go into the video thing. The other one's got a whole wall of it. And so if you've got that ecosystem around to give it utility and give it value.
Check it out, backstage.io, and then what we're going to do, for sure, we're going to do another Backstage Con this year, but we haven't announced it yet. It'll probably be a month or two once we kind of work with the community.
And this will be standalone?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
We have to talk to the community.
Stay tuned.
We let them decide. We kind of like, what do you want to do? And we kind of work with them on that. So.
Oh, very exciting. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's great to kind of catch up, and hopefully we can do more of this stuff later in the year.
So this is Bart and Chris from Chis Aniszczyk saying thank you for tuning in.
Awesome. Take care, all. Love it.